down there. After some time, they went outside and they saw the chief.
My mother was pregnant with me in the hospital. I know an habit, and my father didn't know about that.
The upset in 2004, my mom said she was baby to get ready to go to go with my grandmother, and I was a baby, and then the step was shaking, and my dad was sitting on the veranda, so he just moved me and threw me in the porch, and then he ran down because they say the church break down, and then my mommy stayed for it and then we come back down. And my grandmother said she was getting ready she was crying for to go to work, and then she feels everything shaking, and then she runs and she gets screaming, and then my brother come and hold her and she's like, it's okay, relax, and then some of those things fall on my mom. During the earthquake, my mother said that she was standing up on the road and my brother was just going to my mommy said when the earthquake was taking place in 2004, she was washing some clothes and I was in my cradle, and she said when she felt the whole going side to side, she just screamed. My mother, she stayed on that bed rocking her pregnant. She enjoyed her life. My mother said she was pregnant with me, and when she felt the earthquake, she followed my father, and then she went to look for her other children because they went grandmother to meet their granny, and she met them by the church. In 2004, when the earthquake happened, my mother stayed on the bed, and she was like shaking, and she was getting right from the bed.
She was getting right from the bed? Next, yes.
When the earthquake happened in 2004, my mother said that she was home and she felt the place shaking, so she ran outside. When the earthquake happened, my daddy said he feel the house shaking, so he ran out.
When the earthquake was happening, my mother, my auntie, and my uncle, and everybody, they didn't do nothing because it's roof we had. So they just sit down there and they were shocked.
When the earthquake, all my friends were sit down there, but when my brother, my older brother, he was turning around
During the earthquake, my mother was in America having me while I was already born, and after the earthquake, she came back to Dominica to make sure that things were okay.
Okay, so she wasn't already there.
My mother said when during the earthquake in 2004, she said she was going to work and she thought it was a bus.
During the 2004 earthquake, well, it was strong, and like I said, the top of my roof came down crashing on my head. My game system mashed up. My house overturned in a mess. I was kind of scared, and then I was kind of excited because I saw havoc in the place. After a while, I came outside and I saw the church was down, so it was kind of freaky in a way. I didn't expect that to happen. It was a kind of violent earthquake in 2004, so it was kind of like a mixed emotion.
When the earthquake happened in 2004, my mother said that she was home and she felt the place shaking, so she ran outside.
I lived in a wooden house at the time. It was shaking a lot. I got really scared. As a matter of fact, when I reached outside, I was half dressed because it's like you started feeling the tremor and you think it's going to stop, but it lasted for so long. So at one time we decided, you need to run outside. Well, when I came outside, people started complaining and people started talking about it and whatever it was. We came by the church. We realized that the steeple had fallen. We went up by the Methodist church. While we were there, that was the first big aftershock, and we could actually see the walls of the Methodist church popping when the aftershock was shaking, and of course all kind of reports started coming in at that time.
The earthquake was very early in the morning, so I was still in bed sleeping, and the violent shake woke me up. I was very scared because I was younger, so I got out my bed and I ran to my mother.
My mommy said she was baby first get ready to go with my grandmother, and I was a baby, and then the step was shaking and my dad was sitting on the veranda, so he just moved me and threw me in the porch, and then he ran down just because they say the church break down. And then my mommy stayed for it and then we come back down. And my grandmother said she was getting ready for her to first cry for her to go to work. And then she feels everything shaking, and then she run and she just screaming. And then my brother come and hold her and tell her, it's okay, relax. And then someone just came call her mom.
Well, I think most memorable experience is the fact that that's something you did not expect. And persons were just about their day-to-day activities, we were preparing for church, we were doing this, we were doing dressing, and you just suddenly feel that shaking and that moving, and there's nothing that you can stop there. You hear creaking and cracking, and here you are in the middle of everything. Your first impulse is to get away from there. And this was it. We ran out of the house, and the television fell, and this, and everybody onto the street and screaming, and when the shock and the wave kind of subsided, everybody's curious to see what happened because everybody's stopping. And I remember we left home and we went to the Methodist area in Sikaka. To me, this was the worst part. And then I passed by the church, the Catholic church. So the steeple's down, the walls are down, and just total pandemonium everywhere. But I think there's also a level of curiosity because it was a rare thing for us to see those kind of things. So everybody was, while you're scared, you're still curious to know what was going on.
My mother said she was pregnant with me, and when she felt the earthquake, she phoned my father, and then she went to look for her other children because they went grandmother to meet their granny, and she met them by the church.
The 2004 earthquake was very destructive. I think that was the most destructive earthquake in Dominica, and as a result they had a lot of serious and very hard aftershocks, and I experienced one in the primary school where I was the only student who actually took the measures when experiencing an earthquake. I went under the table, which was kind of I did not expect to react in that way, but I did so also. And when the actual earthquake happened, I saw the rest of my class rushing outside, which is not a very good measure to take, but it was a very exciting but frightening experience.
I remember quite clearly on November 24, 2004. It was a Sunday morning. It was cold because it was raining. It had been raining the night before, and I was walking back from getting bread. I lived in Zikak at the time, and at first I felt a shaking, but I wasn't quite sure what I felt. And then I heard a rumbling, and I looked up. I was adjacent to St. John's School, and I could see the steeple of the Catholic Church like it looked like it was falling down, and I heard the ringing, the pealing of the bells. And I was like, but I know it doesn't have church today because I know it was Christ the King Sunday. And I remember quite clearly there was a coaster waiting to be loaded with people. I think there were maybe having 1 or 2 persons on the coaster. And I remember hearing the bells pealing, and I was like, but what's going on? So it took a few seconds to adjust that it was actually an earthquake taking place. So I stood under the building, it had a high flooring, it was a 2-story building, and I stood under it and I held onto one of the columns. And I remember seeing the steeple coming down, and I was in total shock. I felt that was going to crash on the bus and people were going to be killed, and I stood there with my mouth open, and I was just in shock, and the ground was shaking, and I was terrified. That lasted for a few minutes, and when it subsided, everyone was in a state of panic. I heard screaming, I heard people running around, I started holding their heads, and no one was quite sure what was happening. That was the first one, and I ran back home to ensure that the person that I left at home was safe, that my stuff was safe. When I came home, my TV was on the floor, my son was crying, stuff I had to get for breakfast was all over the place because no one was quite ready or prepared for that. So a few hours afterwards, I walked around the town, and I remember very clearly walking around on Benjamin's Park, and what felt, I knew then as an aftershock started happening. And I remember we were running across the park, and I said, no, I have to stop. So I just stood in one place, and I saw buildings look like they were dancing with the movement of the aftershock. And then my friends and I went over to the seashore because I did some research, and I was like, but after an earthquake sometimes there is something called a tsunami. So I said, well, if that happens, well, if we did what's wrong? I went to the seaside, and we observed that the sea actually had receded a little bit, not much. So I was like, okay, well, there's not much cause for concern. But that experience I will never forget as long as I live.
When the earthquake happened, my mother stayed on the bed, and she was like shaking, and she was getting right from the bed.
She was getting right from the bed?
My experience in the 2004 earthquake was very frightening and scary. I was on my mother's bed jumping that day, and the house started to shake, and I got really scared. All the elements in the house started to fall down. My mother's wardrobe almost fell to the ground. And during the aftershock, my mother put down the TV before it had broke.
All my friends were sitting down there, but when my older brother, he was running around
Alright, I recall that very frightening and scary morning of the earthquake in 2004. I was just getting up from bed when the entire house was shaking very vigorously. I was very frightened. I saw my own father and my brother running down the steps in a very frightening way. It was very traumatic, very scary. The rest of the day I did not want to go back in that house because it was extremely scary. I mean, I felt uncomfortable for the rest of the day. And every other sound that I heard from that time, very scary. I felt like another earthquake was about to occur. And when I went around in the neighborhood, everybody seemed extremely traumatized. Everybody was scared. The wind frightened people, and I mean, even voices, the sound of the vehicle frightened people.
When the earthquake was happening, my mother, my auntie, and my uncle, and everybody, they didn't do nothing because it's roof we had. So they just sit down there and they were shocked.
That morning we were on our way to Christ the King. We were already at church on a bus that was located next to the sidewalk, and I was just checking on the persons who were there to see if they had paid their bus fare for the trip, and the bus began to shake. So I just assumed that it was a tremor, since we were having a lot of tremors prior to that. So I did not take it for anything. And then stones began to roll down from the church wall. So the stones started to enter the bus, and somebody said, Alice, you're not closing the door then. So I closed the door, and then a man wanted to go inside, but he cannot pass through because the wall is caving in, and so everybody had to stay in the bus. And then the shake became more violent, and so everybody was scared and trying to get out of the bus. However, the steeple was coming. Well, we looked and we saw the steeple coming on. Actually, the steeple was coming on the bus. All of us saw it was actually coming on the bus. but by God's grace, it moved actually and fell at the back of the bus. And as soon as the tremor started, well, the door was blocked, so we could no longer enter because pass out because all the stones had fallen and was blocking the entrance, so we could not open the door. So most of us would pass through the windows. Some passed through the bus driver's seat, and we went out. He had already left the bus, actually, and then we decided that we were going by the bay to pray. We were not aware that there could have been a tsunami, although we were told that in Glenvilla the sea had receded a bit, but we were not aware. So we went by the church to pray, as usual. By the sea to pray. We met in a group because we were already going to church anyway. I think God has saved us that day. He did not have any tsunami because we would have been caught in the tsunami. And at the end of that, we went back to our various homes. But during the course of the day, we met again to pray. Well, I was quite shaken up a bit. I did not realize that I was in shock until after probably the next day. When I was walking to the session, I was kind of feeling light, hardly able to stand up. But it's after I realized, well, I was in quite a shock at that time.